The quiet progression. Naruto stood in the training field, surrounded by the quiet rustle of leaves and the faint chirping of birds. The wind tugged at his clothes as he stood perfectly still, eyes closed, focusing on his breath. In a single moment, he vanished. A blur of motion. Naruto reappeared 20 feet away, his feet barely touching the ground before he flickered again, leaving behind a shimmering afterimage in his wake. Each movement was precise, fluid, and faster than before. The body flicker was no longer just a jutsu, it was becoming a second nature to him. But even as he moved at a speed that would leave most of his peers breathless, Naruto felt nothing. There was no rush of excitement, no sense of accomplishment. It was just another step forward in his training, another task to complete. Flicker, flicker, flicker. He paused, standing in the exact spot where he'd begun. The afterimages lingered for a second longer, fading slowly into nothingness. His chakra control had improved to the point that his clones were almost tangible, as if a real version of him had been standing there. Still, Naruto couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. "She's here again." Naruto sensed her presence before he even turned his head. Hinata, standing at the edge of the training field, watching him in her usual quiet way. She had been following his training sessions more frequently now, but Naruto didn't really mind. In fact, he didn't care at all. She wasn't a distraction, and that was all that mattered. Hinata shifted nervously, her eyes never leaving him. Normally, anyone else might feel awkward or self-conscious being watched like this. But Naruto? He simply resumed his training as if she wasn't even there. His emotions, or lack thereof, had become almost mechanical. The idea of feeling embarrassed, shy, or even curious about why she was watching him seemed foreign. "Whatever," he muttered under his breath, vanishing from her line of sight with another flicker. Naruto continued his routine, repeating the motions, testing his limits, his speed. Each flicker was faster than the last. He tried to recall the fleeting sensation of joy that used to come from mastering a new technique, but it was like chasing a distant memory. He couldn't feel it anymore. He wasn't excited by his progress. It was simply something to be done. As he trained, he found himself analyzing his chakra levels. He had enough chakra to keep this up for hours, an advantage no one else had. His reserves were massive, but he still didn't know how to fully exploit them. His speed was impressive, but speed alone wouldn't win every fight. He needed something more, something to complement the body flicker technique. For a brief moment, he thought about trying medical jutsu again. He'd seen how useful it was in combat, how it could be the difference between life and death, but his attempts so far had been fruitless. Naruto stopped, panting slightly from exertion. His body wasn't tired, but his mind was. Not from the physical strain, but from the emptiness that followed every flicker. "Is this it?" he thought to himself, looking at his hands. "Is this all there is to strength?" Hinata's observation. Hinata stood silently, unsure of whether she should approach him or not. Naruto had become increasingly distant lately, not just physically, but emotionally too. She watched him from afar, admiring his strength, but also sensing the growing coldness in his demeanor. "Does he know I'm here?" she wondered, her heart racing. But she never worked up the courage to ask, and Naruto, as always, seemed completely indifferent to her presence. Naruto flickered out of sight once again, vanishing in a blur of motion, leaving Hinata standing alone on the training field, her thoughts heavy with concern. Shikamaru's realization. Shikamaru's gaze drifted across the classroom, catching the subtle shifts in the way people looked at Naruto. Most of the class didn't know what to make of him. Some thought he was strange, others thought he was strong, but they all kept their distance. Except for one person. Sasuke. Shikamaru noticed the way Sasuke would glance over at Naruto every now and then, his expression unreadable but tinged with something off. It wasn't exactly hostility, but there was a certain tension in Sasuke's gaze, an underlying current of frustration. And it wasn't just because Naruto was strong, it was something deeper. Sasuke had always been the top of the class, the one everyone admired or feared, but Naruto, silent, detached, and indifferent, was starting to become an anomaly that even Sasuke couldn't ignore. It was as if Naruto didn't acknowledge Sasuke's existence at all. Shikamaru could tell that bothered Sasuke more than anything. Interesting, Shikamaru muttered under his breath. He wasn't one for drama, but even he could feel the growing friction between the two. Yet, Naruto seemed completely oblivious, or, more likely, completely uninterested in whatever silent rivalry was forming. Shikamaru's eyes narrowed. Naruto didn't react to the subtle tension, didn't flinch at Sasuke's occasional stares, and didn't seem to care that the rest of the class either avoided him or spoke about him in whispers. Naruto was an enigma, and that made him more dangerous than anyone else. Strong, yes, but it was his complete lack of emotional investment in the things that seemed to matter to everyone else that set him apart. And for someone like Sasuke, who thrived on competition and rivalry, that detachment was probably infuriating. Class continued, but Shikamaru couldn't shake the sense that something was brewing. Sasuke was quietly sizing Naruto up, probably already planning some way to prove himself superior. Naruto, meanwhile, sat completely still, as if the entire class was irrelevant. Shikamaru sighed inwardly. What a drag. But even he couldn't deny that Naruto's indifference was intriguing and troubling. Training with Kakashi, pushing limits. Naruto stood in the clearing, facing Kakashi, his breathing steady despite the hours of training they had already gone through. The air around him felt charged with energy, the after images of his movements lingering in the space like faint ghosts. Kakashi observed silently, his one visible eye following Naruto's movements with a growing sense of admiration and concern. "You're improving fast," Kakashi said, watching as Naruto flickered across the field once again, leaving behind another set of near-perfect after-images. Too fast. Naruto said nothing, landing silently a few feet away, his expression as blank as ever. He'd mastered creating the after-images with such speed that even Kakashi was having trouble keeping track of him, and that was a problem. "You're pushing your body flicker to its limits," Kakashi continued, stepping forward, his hands tucked in his pockets. "But without a way to deal damage, it's only going to get you so far." Naruto nodded once, absorbing the information without any visible reaction. He was quick to understand tactics, but still had a long way to go in developing offensive strategies. His speed was unmatched, but Kakashi knew that speed alone wouldn't be enough in real combat. "Try again, but this time your strikes better," Kakashi instructed. "Flicker behind me and aim for a strike when you think I'm at my weakest. You need to combine speed with precision if you want to make this work in a real fight." Naruto flickered out of sight again, the faint trace of his chakra lingering in the air. Kakashi felt the shift before he saw it. Naruto's after-images flickered around him in an unpredictable pattern, each one a potential threat. In an instant, Kakashi raised his arm to block, but Naruto's speed had improved to the point that even Kakashi was forced to exert more effort. He parried the strike just in time, but realized that Naruto was already preparing another flicker behind him. "Impressive," Kakashi muttered under his breath. "But—" Naruto came at him again, his movements so fast that Kakashi could barely keep track. He felt a momentary urge to lift his headband, to activate the Sharingan, but he hesitated. "No," Kakashi thought. "Not yet, but soon." "Again," Kakashi ordered, and Naruto complied, flickering into action once more. Hinata's observation, silent affection. Hinata watched from the corner of the classroom, her heart heavy as she observed Naruto's indifference. He had grown so powerful, so fast, and yet he seemed so disconnected from the world around him. She admired his strength, but felt a pang of sadness at his emotional distance. "Doesn't he care about anything?" she thought, biting her lip. "Doesn't he care about what others think?" She remembered the time he had cheered her on during the last practice, the way he had encouraged her without realizing how much it meant to her. But now, he seemed lost in his training, consumed by his need to grow stronger. As the days went by, Hinata began to feel more like a distant observer in Naruto's life, wanting to reach out, but unsure how to connect with someone so emotionally closed off. Kakashi's concern. Kakashi stood outside the Hokage's office, the sun filtering through the leaves overhead, casting dappled shadows on the ground. He was hesitant, but he knew he had to speak to Hiruzen about Naruto. The young ninja's emotional detachment was becoming harder to ignore, and Kakashi felt a sense of urgency to address it. "Come in," Hiruzen called, sensing Kakashi's presence outside the door. As Kakashi stepped inside, he found Hiruzen seated at his desk, poring over a pile of paperwork. The Hokage looked up, his expression shifting to one of concern as he noticed Kakashi's serious demeanor. "What's on your mind, Kakashi?" Hiruzen asked, setting his papers aside. "It's about Naruto," Kakashi began, his voice low. "He's growing stronger, but I'm worried. There's a growing emotional detachment in him. He's pushing everyone away, and I'm not sure he even realizes it." Hiruzen's gaze softened, the weight of his years evident in the lines of his face. "Ah, Naruto has always been like that. Even as a child, he struggled to connect with others. It's a defense mechanism." Kakashi frowned, crossing his arms. "But he needs to learn to form bonds, especially with his teammates. It'll only make him stronger." Hiruzen nodded slowly, his expression contemplative. "I understand your concerns. Naruto has faced a lot of challenges throughout his life, and that has shaped who he is today. It's not that he doesn't want to connect, it's that he doesn't know how. He has built walls around himself to cope." "Isn't there anything we can do?" Kakashi pressed, his brows furrowing in concern. "I fear that if he doesn't confront this, it will hold him back." Hiruzen sighed, leaning back in his chair. "We can guide him, but ultimately, it's up to Naruto to realize that he doesn't have to be alone. He needs to confront those emotions when he's ready. All we can do is be there for him when he does." "I just hope he figures it out soon," Kakashi replied, feeling a knot of worry tighten in his stomach. "He's strong, but he's missing something vital." "Yes," Hiruzen agreed, gazing out the window toward the village. "But strength can come from many places, including within oneself. Sometimes it just takes time." Kakashi nodded, knowing he'd have to keep a close eye on Naruto. The young ninja had a journey ahead of him, and Kakashi was determined to be a part of it. The gathering storm, a new resolve. With the final exam looming closer, Naruto felt an unwavering determination surge within him. The anticipation in the air was thick, but he remained indifferent to the chatter and excitement of his classmates. All that mattered was his own desire to be the best, to surpass everyone else, not for the sake of connection, but purely to prove them wrong. He trained relentlessly, pushing his limits in ways that left him breathless. Each time he flickered across the training ground, creating afterimages that blurred the line between reality and illusion, he felt a sense of satisfaction wash over him. This is what strength feels like, he thought, a single-minded focus consuming him. "I'll show them. I'll show everyone that I'm better," he thought with a cold resolve. There was no need for camaraderie or friendship. It was about superiority. The thrill of being stronger, faster, and more skilled than his peers was the only validation he sought. In the classroom, whispers about the final exam swirled around him, but Naruto paid them no mind. He heard the names of his classmates, Sasuke, Shikamaru, Hinata, echoing in conversations, but they were nothing more than background noise. He didn't care about their opinions or expectations. He only cared about proving himself better than them. "Let them think I'm weird," he thought dismissively. "Let them think they're stronger." It didn't matter to him. He knew the truth. He was the strongest. With each passing day, Naruto dedicated himself to refining his techniques, his body flicker jutsu becoming more precise and powerful. He visualized his opponents, not as friends or allies, but as obstacles to be overcome. Each training session was a testament to his growing strength, and every successful afterimage he created fueled his desire to surpass them. "I won't lose," he told himself, devoid of any emotional weight behind the words. "I can't afford to." As the sun set on the eve of the finals, Naruto stood alone in the training field, sweat glistening on his brow. The world around him faded away, leaving only the singular drive to prove everyone wrong. "I'll become stronger," he vowed silently. "I'll show them what it means to be the best,